Hey, what's going on, guys? I hope you guys are doing well. I'm gonna give you guys a chance to come into the conversation. I want to say hello and welcome to Dr. Boyce TV, the home for intelligent Black people. This is where we have real, raw, honest conversations about intelligent issues, and we elevate the discussion so that we can all be better people at the end of it. And so today, my special guest happens to be somebody who is very, very smart. She's one of the smartest people I know. She happens to be among many things, a leadership coach, in addition to a diversity expert and a great entrepreneur. I'd like to introduce you guys. If you remember her before, you know her before, but I'd like to introduce those who are new to Nicole Price. How are you, Nicole?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for asking.
Very nice, very nice. And you are the author of the book, The Lively Paradox, correct?
That's correct. And I also have a business named after the book.
Ah, okay. Oh, okay. You know what? I did know that, but now I know that again. Now you reminded me. Okay, so you've been an entrepreneur for a while. You've run your own company, but you've also done a lot of different ventures. Like you spent a lot of time in corporate America, and then you stepped away from corporate and did something with a smaller company, and now you are the boss. Now you are the CEO of your company. So you've had an interesting journey. I thought that it would be fun to kind of talk about something that you and I discuss, which is, just sort of working with people that are hard to work with, like dealing with it, both either as a coworker or as a business partner, or maybe even a subordinate, and sort of fighting through those challenges. So first off, let me ask you this. Have you had, I mean, if I were to just sort of ask you, just from a personal perspective, have you had a lot of experience dealing with, difficult people to work with and just sort of fighting through that stuff?
Absolutely. And I'd also say that at times I've been the difficult person for others to get along with. What we didn't talk about is that early in my career, I was a chemical engineer and I worked in the field for 10 years, but my personality doesn't really agree. And when I was in charge of projects or when I was in charge of leading teams or other technical professionals, sometimes my way would just rub up against their way. And so, yes, while I have had difficult situations with lots of teams, both professionally and sometimes in some of my philanthropic work, I at times have been the person.
Hmm. Interesting. So there have been times where you've been the person that was difficult, and then there were times where someone else is difficult. And it is funny because
Yeah.
when you talk about working with difficult people, it's not always even a matter where you can clearly assess the blame. Like
Yeah.
it might just be a difference in perspectives. Two good people who just don't see eye to eye, and you end up fighting. I want to ask everybody in the audience. Tell me. I would like some people to testify with me. Have you had situations where you've worked with somebody that seemed impossible to work with, or had a business partner that just pissed you off, or maybe somebody that worked for you who pissed you off? Say your name. Yeah, like just say, don't say their name. Just let us know that you can relate to what we're talking about. Have you had that happen? I see Butterfly 44 says, OMG, I just experienced this today. I got a promotion at my job, and my supervisor went to my future manager and tried to deplete my position. When
Mm,
you dig a ditch for someone, you dig one for yourself. Wow, humble visionary says all the time. Yeah, it seems to me like this is a pretty common problem, and I guess it's sort of like a matter of saying, this seems pretty normal. It seems like when you bring human beings together and human beings are trying to do things together, you're gonna have conflicts, right? I mean, that's kind of to be expected in almost any endeavor, right?
yeah. And some of the challenges when we have smaller businesses is that because we've gotten out of the bureaucracy of working in larger institutions, we forget some of the structure that larger institutions have in place to help people get along better. So, if you work in a big enough organization, when you start on a new team, they'll pull the team together, they'll do some team building exercises. Many of us hated those team building exercises, but they served a purpose. They helped you to build camaraderie, helped to build some level of trust, helped to understand basic psychological contracts. How do people like to deal with each other? And when we have smaller businesses, and I'm guilty of this as well, um, sometimes you're like, we just don't have time for that. Are you good? Can you do the work that I've asked you to do? Well, let's get going. And when we skip past that team norming and forming stages, it's always going to cause problems.
Mm. Well, I think that what's interesting is, that I almost can't help but wonder if, you know, if black people have an especially difficult time working together, or if this is just something that's universal to everybody. I mean, if you look back at slavery, slavery had codes and rules and procedures in place designed to make sure we were divided, to make sure
Yeah.
we didn't like it. We would find a reason not to like each other. And you guys feel free to throw in your 2 cents on this. Do you, Nicole, do you think that there's something unique about the black experience when it comes to sort of, infighting, whether it's, starting a business or trying to work together, or even as a family, or do you think that this is just something that happens in every family and we shouldn't sort of be racially alarmed by any of this?
Yeah, yeah. Let me just quote Dr. Ibram Kendi and say, I'm here to say there's nothing wrong with Black people except for we think there's something wrong with Black people. I at one point in my life used to have the racist idea that Black people had a harder time getting along than everyone else. But many of my clients are in completely white, homogeneous environments, and they have the same kinds of challenges. Because sometimes what we think is just race related, or sometimes what we think is gender related, or background or culture, oftentimes is personality. You like to reflect and think about what you want to say before you communicate. And I like to talk out loud to work things out. When you get those two differences in a room and you don't talk about it and people don't have an understanding, you are setting yourself up for trouble. It could also be just as simple as, I get my energy at the last minute when I'm working on a project. I'm spontaneous. I like to jump right in. I'm emergent. I'm not all that scheduled. If I'm working with a person who is very scheduled, methodical, early starting, we're going to have some battles if we don't appreciate the differences in others. And so I don't know that I don't believe that that is unique to Black people. That's a human condition.
Mm. Okay, so we're not as crazy as we lead ourselves to believe. We're just human, and human beings have conflict. Well, let me ask you this, Nicole. One thing that does concern me though is, like, I was watching a movie. I was watching the Avengers, and I was watching the ending credits because they always show something new at the end
Yeah.
for the next movie. And I was, while I was wasting the time, I was just trying to kind of not count specifically, but kind of, I was looking at how many names were coming down the list. Like, it was literally hundreds, maybe thousands of people that had to work together to make this thing happen. They'd be like, okay, this is the costume department. It'd be like 500 people, right? And then it'd be like, okay, this is the sound team, and they'd have the leader and 1,000 people. And I was fascinated by how many people, how many thousands of people have to come together and work together and find a way to resolve their differences in order to just make a movie, right? And then I thought about our people, right? I thought about my experiences. I thought about times where we'd have a team of like 8, and 3 of the 8 are like trying to kill each other, right? And you run into these differences that can't be resolved. Now, again, maybe it's not a black thing. Maybe it's just a bad leadership thing. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's a bad organizational structure or whatever. But I've just seen so many cases of that where, like, you have a great idea, great concept, and sometimes it would take one person. Anybody else ever seen that, where like one asshole will blow up the whole thing? I mean, I'm talking about like Hollywood movies. I was in LA and I knew a guy who, he doesn't, he's very famous. He doesn't understand why nobody works with him. It's because he destroys projects. He comes in, gets mad, and goes off, and the next thing you know, people lost a bunch of money. So it almost seems to me like there's still work that we might have to do specifically, because I can't think of one single project where black people are working on this as a group that is as big as, like, say, an Avengers movie. Can anybody name one thing that we're doing in a coordinated fashion, that's structured, where people are making money and getting paid to do their job, and the final product is something as big as like a Captain America movie? I can't think of anything.
Yeah, I mean, I do know some pretty large Black-owned corporations, but in short, I will say I am not discounting post-traumatic slave syndrome at all. Like, we do have some residual effects of that, but I also will say that what I see that's more true or as true is that we don't want the structure. We don't. We're like, I dealt with that structure in the system, and for my business, I'm gonna ditch it. You know, I'm not going to do team setup. I'm not gonna spend any time on professional or leadership development. Whatever our product is, that's what we do. I'm not spending any money on leadership development. And when you say, well, perhaps it's leadership, I am going to tell you that the leaders related to the Avengers movie were able to inspire people around an idea. And they gave people very clear roles. If you're in costume, you're not over there in the finance department trying to tell us how to do our jobs. You are very clear on your role, you are executing on your role, and that structure is in place. And I'm not always a structural frame. More often, I'd like to be more in the human resources and how humans are getting along together. But the larger you get, or the more revenue you are making, the more structure you need to make it operate. And I get it. People don't like silos. They don't like, bureaucracy. And when you're the founder of an organization, then I have the founder's ego to deal with. It's a lot of things that we all need to think about how we can tackle. And it's just easier sometimes, not always, but easier sometimes to say these Black people, they're just hard to get them. We just can't get Black people to get along.
Interesting. Well, everybody, I'm talking to Miss Nicole Price, who is the CEO and founder of the company called Lively Paradox. She has a book with the same name. What's your website, by the way? Is it thelivelyparadox.com or
Livelyparadox.com.
livelyparadox.com? And she's a great leadership coach. She's also a consultant with a lot of companies. She's an entrepreneur. She's done a lot of great things. And just so you know, Nicole, it looks like Super Omega is flirting with you in the chat. He says you're beautiful and intelligent. So I will make sure that we tell. We'll say it. So she said thank you. It's nice. It's okay to tell a Black woman she's beautiful as long as you're respectful about it.
I love it.
All right. Okay. So in terms of organizational development, one of the things I can say that I'd actually reached out to you and read some books on this, but I realized when I became an entrepreneur that I needed to work on my leadership skill. I learned that there are things that that you think you can just kind of wing it through, but then you learn that, wait a minute, there's a lot of stuff you don't know. You got to go back to school to figure out how to manage people and processes. And I remember one thing you actually brought up that I thought was really interesting is you were actually showing me, or really going into detail on that whole 16 personalities thing, right? How there's like all these different people with all these different personalities, and you were I remember when we were talking about it, you were saying, just so that you guys know, if you ever want to go look at any of the interviews I've done with Nicole in the past, they're out there. Just look up Nicole Price and Boyce Watkins, and you were talking about how you were taking different personalities and you were saying, okay, if this person in this group is talking to this person, they're going to say this, but this other person is going to hear that, and this person is going to do this. Like an introvert talking to an extrovert is going to be awkward because the extrovert will interpret the introvert's silence to mean that they're not engaged. And the introvert ends up exhausted from trying to keep up with the extrovert and all the talking that they're doing. And I laugh about that because when I'm talking to Alicia, she's an extrovert and I'm an introvert. And and there are times where I have to say, my brain is tired. Like I need to rest, So can you talk about that a little bit? Just in terms of the fact that people's brains are just different, and it seems that we sometimes forget that the way we see something is not the way other people are going to see it.
And I think intellectually we know that. Like if I were to ask you, do you think that your point of view and your way of thinking is the same as other people's? Most folks would say, oh, well, of course not. Every person's an individual and they think differently. But when we're making decisions swiftly, when we are, rooted and grounded in our work, we can forget that. And I will see the world through my lens, and then I will judge you by your ability to fit through that lens or not. And I know we like to think that we're individuals, but there's a lot of science to just the way humans behave. And I've gotten so good that sometimes I can just listen to what frustrates a person and tell you what their personality is.
Interesting. Really?
Excuse me.
Bless you. So you can listen to a person and what frustrates them, and by what frustrates them, you can tell what general category their personality belongs in. Really?
Yeah. So if a person tends to say words like "I feel," "I believe," they generally are a more empathetic decision maker. They typically are far more accommodating, harmonious, generally talk to people with tactful tones. Folks would describe them as soft. And these are sweeping generalizations. Clearly, if you take the assessment and I have the science, it's helpful. But when people say, I think, or I believe, or I think, or I'm just being honest, those people are decision makers who make decisions based on logic and reason, and they're very objective. They are not the most empathetic and compassionate people, and folks describe them as tough. And I can listen to that and tell you without them taking the assessment. Another thing is if somebody's incredibly detailed in the way that they give instructions. So let's say I'm asking you how to get from your house to the grocery store, and you tell me how many blocks it is to the corner where I'm supposed to turn. You tell me how many miles it is to the next corner. You tell me at the stoplight I need to go east or west. If you give those kinds of instructions, I know that the way you like to learn is by sensing, that you're a more practical learner, that you value traditions. I know that you don't want to deal in concepts and theory. You want to what actually will work. What is happening now? What problem are we solving? But if you say, it's down there where the old McDonald's used to be, if that's how you give instruction, then I know that the way you like to learn is by being inspired, that you do like theory, that, when you're giving instructions, you're like, I don't care how you get to three. If we're just get me to three, and I'm fine with that. And when you get those two types of people together, folks will not trust you if you don't understand the way that they like to learn. And because we don't understand that, we're just walking around through the world all day long, just assuming that people appreciate our way. And some people do, and others don't. And it's worth a conversation. I'm now of the opinion that when people are deciding to be in romantic relationships, even, they should take a serious look at compatibility.
Interesting.
That's all eHarmony is doing. They're looking at your personality type and telling you who would be more compatible to you.
Wow. That's fascinating. So it's almost like now, when we first started talking about this compatibility issue, I was thinking more in terms of business. But you think about business, that's a relationship, right? And like a lot of other things, right? So it seems to me that same rule would apply in that eHarmony context, right? When you're thinking about who you want to marry, who you want to spend your time with, compatibility matters. I know that I got to the point where when I really wanted to understand people, after you sort of put me onto it, I started actually having people that I cared about take that test, that the 16 personalities test, to see where they fit. And when that happened, so many things became clearer in terms of saying, okay, now I get it. Now I understand why this person doesn't get me when I say this in this way, right? Or now I know why this person hates that particular job, because it's not a fit for how their brain works, and so. By the way, I want everybody to know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to Nicole Price. She's the author of the book, The Lively Paradox. Her website is livelyparadox.com. She's a leadership coach and consultant, and among many other things, and an entrepreneur as well. Please take a second, hit the thumbs up button. If you haven't hit the thumbs up button, please do that. Also, don't forget, I'll be in New Orleans next week. You can go to Dr. Boyce New Orleans if you'd like to get tickets. It's a 2-day conference, a 2-day business conference with several experts. So it's kind of a big deal. There is a price point, but it's well worth your while. Second of all, I'll be in Chicago, July 28th. You can go to drboycechicago.com to join the investing seminar there. So I want to make sure you guys know about that. Hit that thumbs up button. Please do that. So Nicole, I'll ask you a couple more questions, because I know you're really busy, and I appreciate you taking the time to kind of join us. So I'll tell you what, one of the things that has really, eluded me, and I don't even know how much of this can actually be escaped or not, but and the people that watch me regularly, they know what I'm talking about, is I've had times where I've worked with a couple of people, and as much as I really wanted things to work out well, they just wouldn't. And the thing about it is that it's left me feeling kind of a little bit saddened that, or maybe even borderline cynical, that as a so-called, as a public Black man, and some would say a powerful Black man. I don't see myself that way, but I accept that, that there's always somebody that wants to find the evil, horrible side of you and throw that out to the world. You know, like, I'm going to get this son of a bitch back. I'm going to go and say terrible things about him and all this other stuff. And it's not like it'll be easy if these were just strangers who just, you know, haters and just terrible people. But these are people that, you know, maybe I can remember I went to bat for, you know, loaned them money when they had no money, gave them opportunities when they had no opportunities. And I've worked past it. I accept it. I'm just like, okay, well, it's just part of the game. People are going to throw mud at you. It happens. And I know people get it. I think people that know me, they just kind of get it. Like, okay, these two don't get along and I don't care. But I don't like it, you know, and I've always looked to say, what did I do wrong? Was it my communication style? Did I communicate something the wrong way? Did I trust the wrong person? Or is this part of the game? Is it just something you're just going to deal with? You meet 10 people, one of them's going to be, you know, a lunatic. What do you think? What would you say to somebody like me who just, you know, made such a ridiculously pathetic public confession like that?
Well, what I love is I know your personality. So because I know your personality, it's very natural for you to not personalize it, but to care about it, to be a little more subjective, to step in it and to say, where did I go wrong? That's very much you know, something with your someone with your passion and community focus. That's something that you would do. So I would say just understand that all the things that make you great come with an underbelly, just like for all of us, right? So that's just part of it. The way you care about that is related to the way you care about Black people, right? You have the caring
Mhm.
muscle, and so you can't turn that off when it's inconvenient. Do you understand what I'm saying there?
Mhm.
But also, let me just say, in solidarity with you, I know exactly what it's like to pour into someone and to love them and care for them and want to work for them and to see working with them as a family and not as just a business. I know what that looks like when that person turns and then stabs you in the back. I know what that looks like, and it's painful. Um, and so with that, I will just say there's a reason why things like non-disclosure agreements are in place. Like, why would an attorney ever need to come up with those? Because people are people and they do things when the relationship severs that is problematic. Why, when couples divorce, do we need a parenting plan? You've got two people, they loved each other enough to have children. Why do we need a formal document with a parenting plan? Because people, especially people who were super, super, super deep in love or really liked each other, if we're talking about the work environment, you can just, there's another side of that, and they will turn and hate you with the same viciousness that they loved you with. And that's human condition, but there's some things we can ward, we can protect ourselves from some of these things. So what I invite business owners to do when they're hiring new people is to use the first 30, 60, 90 days to your benefit. So let's say you've gone through the interview process and you're like, yes, this person is a great hire. Have all your structure in place about contracts and non-disclosures and non-compete clauses in place. You know, I'm a fan of following legal rigor. But if in the 30, 60, 90-day period, you see something that you find alarming, use that time to separate yourself from that person. That is what that time is for. You're testing it out. Consider it a dating period. Would you marry someone if in the dating period they gave you a red flag? You wouldn't. And so when you decide that you're just going to keep that employment contract in place or that contractor contract in place after you've already seen in the 30, 60, 90-day period that, hey, there's some red flags, what you did was marry somebody who showed you dating trouble. That's what you did. And so that's what that's one thing that I would invite people to do. Another thing that I ask leaders to be super clear about. So let's say there's no red flags, but after the 30, 60, 90-day period, people are just not getting along. When people struggle to get along, it's almost always based in two things: lack of clarity around goals or lack of clarity around roles. So let's talk about goals. So Boyce, you think the goal is to grow revenue. And I think that the goal is more symbolic about maybe increasing wealth in the Black community. You see how those things are different, right? Those are different goals. And if we have different goals and we're on the same team, it's bound to cause an argument. And so it is imperative that the leader, as frequently and as often as possible, clarifies goals. Like, you can't say it enough. What are we trying to do and why are we doing it? And keep that in front of people. You can't say it once and assume that they're going to get it.
Interesting.
Early and often, you clarify goals. The other thing is roles. Right now, my son has a German Shepherd. And my role with this German Shepherd, in my mind, is nothing. He thinks that when he goes to work, since I'm here, I should watch his dog. Lack of clarity around roles. And so but see, if we don't talk about this, right? When the first time he leaves his dog here, and then I leave because I got stuff to do, then what is he gonna send me a text and say? Mom, you left the dog at home all day? And I'm like, that ain't my dog. What you talking about? But that argument is all because we were not clear about goals and roles. I'm like, the moment you asked for a German Shepherd, what you asked for was a dog. And that comes with a lot of responsibilities. It doesn't include me.
Interesting. Yeah,
we need to have that conversation before the German Shepherd shows up, right?
That is your statement kind of confirms what it confirms that I'm not as dumb as I used to be, because one of the things I remember learning as I was learning how to try to become a better leader was I remember reading something about just repeating yourself or repeating key information, key objectives, keeping it clear and simple and straightforward. And because I think I was reading some statement from the guy, maybe the guy who created Domino's Pizza or whatever. And he said, basically, I spent a decade repeating myself. like literally, like they have very simple goals and or quarterly rocks or whatever. And he would just repeat it over and over. And now when I give, an instruction, I assume I'm going to have to tell you 7 times before it really sinks in. And it works. My team doesn't have nearly as much ambiguity about what it is we're trying to do, who's supposed to do what, because I'll just repeat it over and over and over again. So it almost seems to fit what you're saying in terms of, goals and roles, and then, just expectations, which is connected to that, right? Just, what I expect from you, what you expect from me. And because misunderstanding, I think, leads to so many issues, misunderstanding or just lack of communication, which are connected, right? So you don't communicate, there's misunderstandings. Next thing you know, we start making assumptions based on misunderstandings due to a lack of communication. Next thing you know, 2 people are fighting. And it's even worse because sometimes they end up, fighting over something that could have been resolved, with a conversation. But when you fight so much, you get to a point where you're not talking anymore. And maybe you're talking through other people or you're talking through lawyers, and it just becomes a big old mess. In fact, I know the Nation of Islam, from what I understand, one of the things that they encourage their members to do is that, if you have an issue with somebody, talk to them, call them on the phone, get to go see them and make sure they're clear on exactly what it is you're thinking and what you're feeling. And don't go off what, somebody else told you that they said, or your interpretation of what they did and what you think it means. Talk to them about it. And so that's one of the rules I abide by now. When I have any disagreement with anybody, especially in my own community, first thing I say is, okay, I hear what you're saying, but why don't you need to call me. We need to talk. I hear that, or somebody will come back and say, oh, so-and-so said this about you. But I don't care what you say that they said. I need them to say it to me, and I will tell them what I think. But if you're talking through third parties and fourth parties, it seems like it just gets worse and worse,
Yeah. Like, who among us haven't played that game where you have to say a statement to the person next to you, and then they have to pass it all along, and then by the time it gets to the end of the line, it's nothing that the first person said at all, like not even close.
Yep.
That plays out in real life, and I think you and I are in complete agreement with saying exactly the same thing, that yes, we have to be super clear about goals and roles. Say it early, say it often, a bunch of times, million different ways. Because there'll be some people who'll be like, dude, I got it. But the vast majority of people, you've been at the airport, right? And they've got signs that say, if you don't have TSA, they have signs. They say, take your shoes off, take your belts off. The man standing there, man or woman standing there yelling at you, take your cell phones out of your pockets, no liquids, right? There, how many times did they say it? And inevitably, someone goes through that machine and they've got something in their pocket. Or they
Yep.
get on the other side and they're like, oh, I couldn't have my water. There are visual signs, there's audible signs. You see them taking other people's water in front of you. And I'm not judging those people. I'm holding that up as an example that maybe the first time you said it, I didn't even understand the acronyms you were using. Maybe the second time you said it, I was preoccupied with something else. The third time you said it, my dad was sick and I'm taking care of him the night before, so I'm tired. The fourth time you said it, I don't know. I got to the meeting late. I missed it. We just think that when we're talking, everybody's listening. And it's
Mm-hmm.
no, but I think there's a good part of that too. For business owners who are pushing out content, I think sometimes people think, oh, well, I already said this once. Well, you said it once and nobody heard you because nobody was watching on that. Nobody was using that particular social media channel, or you could use the same content across all these different platforms and you'll get a completely different audience because there are very few people who are following you in all those places. And it's just a testament to the fact that, humans need to hear things multiple times.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll tell you that is one thing that you don't have to tell me twice because I did learn that, and you guys who follow me, I hope that you've noticed that I repeat things a lot because when I was a teacher at Syracuse, well, I'm still a teacher, but when I taught at Syracuse, I remember figuring out like, okay, if I'm talking to 60 students, if I say something one time, a third of them are going to remember this. Like it's just not, I have, even if I repeat, I would get up to 5, 6 times of saying the same thing. And as you mentioned, inevitably there'd be somebody that would come up and ask that same damn question. And you're like, where were you all those times I kept saying this? Are you serious? So anybody in here?
No.
Yeah, I know it's crazy, right? So, how many of you in here? I see some of you mentioned that you are leaders. You're leading on your job. I see Edmundo's actually all the way from the Netherlands. I'm actually going to Europe. I'm going to Scotland and London and Ireland next week, and so just for a family vacation. But also speaking of repeating myself, I'm actually going to be in Chicago July 28th. So if you guys would like to come out to our investment seminar in Chicago, you can go to drboychicago.com. I'll be in New Orleans next week, the weekend of June 28th. If you'd like to come to that, go to drboyceneworleans.com. Last but not least, the All Black National Convention is going to happen in Houston the weekend of September 27th. So if you'd like to learn more, visit allblacknationalconvention.com, allblacknationalconvention.com. And actually, Nicole, I would like to publicly invite you to come to the All Black National Convention. So if you come there, we don't have a big budget, but I know you're balling like that. So I figured you could get your plane ticket and stuff and come down. And if you come down, I will get you on a panel. And I would love for people to meet you in person. And you can bring your books and you can sign books and all this other stuff because everyone loves Nicole. Tell her, Nicole, how great she is. Everybody mention it. Give her a digital round of applause. Encourage her to come to the convention. You going to come to the convention?
I'll come to the convention, but I don't want to be on a panel. I want a keynote.
Oh, damn.
Thanks.
She up here negotiating hardball right in front of everybody. How you gonna put me on the spot like that?
Hey, you started it, see? Give me a keynote
Hey,
in Kansas City. You can give me a keynote in Chicago.
black women be tripping, man. Well, you know what? Damn it, you ain't gonna out Trump me. All right, well you got a keynote then. There we go.
Hey!
There you. All right, you got it. You got what you wanted. And she's worthy of it because Nicole is so smart. And I see you guys are telling her how much you love her. And I'm going to bring her back onto the channel. And it's nighttime, so I'm going to let her go ahead and go to bed. And I want to say thank you, Nicole, for blessing us with your presence. We really appreciate your expertise.
I appreciate you too. Let me know what the people want me to talk about at the convention.
All right, all right. Well, you know what? Based on Nicole's expertise, if you all want to go to her website, livelyparadox.com, see what she's an expert in. You can look up her name and my name together on YouTube. You can find videos. Feel free to suggest the topic that you'd like for her to address at the convention, and you can actually email your topic suggestions to my manager, which her email address is manager@boycewatkins.com. That's manager@boycewatkins.com. So feel free to make suggestions. Nicole has been added in as an official keynote, and it's about to be on because I have that much respect for her expertise, and I hope you guys will respect that as well and go take a look at her website and support the sister's business. So thank you very much, Nicole. I
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
sir.
All right. So you guys take care. Hit the thumbs up button before you go. Don't forget, if you want a free e-copy of my book, It Takes a Village to Raise the Bar, go to drboycewatkins.net. That's drboycewatkins.net. And also don't forget, every Tuesday night at 8 p.m., we do our investing masterclass. If you'd like to join, we're going to start a new cycle very soon. You can go to drboycemasterclass.com. That's drboycemasterclass.com. We're out of here, guys. Have a good night. And thank you again, Nicole. And we will see you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Appreciate you.